Okay, well, welcome to the Saturday morning call. It's Friday evening in the U.S. Dylan's back again. That's great. Okay, so David, let's start off with the question that you had, and I'll say it like this. There are no desperate situations, there's only desperate people. And the only reason why there are desperate people is because they're having desperate thoughts. Okay?
Okay.
And that's an example which is much more likely for you to run across in Florida. Yeah, there's alligators. Yeah, there's pythons. There's a few water moccasins and even a few rattlesnakes. But most of those things, rattlesnakes and uh, water moccasins, have been killed off because of all the desperate people. And there's an awful lot of desperate people that are out desperately trying to catch pythons, including alligators. And there's a lot of people out after alligators, desperately trying to catch them and kill them, some of which are pythons. And you've got none of that in your house, nor are you likely to encounter it in your travels and goings. But there is the possibility, much more likely, that you can run across a cop. Is that not true?
Mm-hmm.
You're probably going to see more cops than you are going to see alligators and pythons. And I bet you've probably never even seen a water moccasin. Unless you're a swamp buggy. So, in that situation, many people get desperate when they're around a cop. What does that do to the cop? When people are afraid to the point of desperation when they're around a cop, the cop's going to get desperate too, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He's probably going to be pulling his gun out. So it's pretty dangerous to get desperate. So if it is dangerous to get desperate, perhaps the better thing to do is to not get desperate. And the easiest way to not get desperate is by not being afraid. And so the Buddha was really quite big on let's not be afraid. There's entire sutras about it. And then, in fact, he actually, probably on more than one occasion, sought out spooky, swampy places that, in
Mm-hmm.
fact, Bodh Gaya in those days. I don't know why. I guess they're just so, there's 10 feet of trash under all of the peat that's been there in the past 2,500 years, but it's not a swamp anymore. So, in the time of the Buddha, that area was swampy, and he liked it because it was haunted, spooky, dangerous, which meant that he was in seclusion because nobody else is going to be there.
Yeah.
And then he had also the opportunity to deal with real fear. Now, in almost all cases, including the people that I talk to, and for sure the general population, there is a whole lot more fear than there are desperate situations. There's a whole lot more opportunity to have the danger inside of one's mind. For instance, a cop does not have to be seen as dangerous, but if you see the cop as dangerous and you get desperate, you're in a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
What was his name? George Floyd that got killed. The guy was on his neck. Okay. Do you know why? It's because George Floyd had gotten really desperate. He
Yeah.
was so afraid of the cops, don't kill me, don't kill me, don't kill me, that he started to cling to the steering wheel. He wouldn't get out of the car. He wouldn't calm down. And that got the cops excited enough to drag him to the ground and try to get him to cool off. And he didn't cool off until he was dead. He kept struggling right on. Right? Do any of you know that story? It was widely spread several years ago on the internet, and I was looking at that and I was saying,
Are you sure you want to say that and record that and put it on the internet? I mean, people got very upset over that killing. You should be careful about taking sides.
You're right. All of the people who saw that video got desperate, just like George did. But if he had been calm the whole time, he wouldn't have had that happen to him.
Yeah.
What do you mean by desperate?
Yeah, we have to cooperate with the cops. They're a whole bunch of bullies. If you don't cooperate with them, they'll out-bully you. They will over-escalate. At whatever level of escalation you go to, they'll go higher than that. That's their training. But that's also true of wild animals. The right thing to do, in fact, for animals is to stay away from them. And the best thing to do with cops is to stay away from them. And sometimes you don't have that opportunity. Now, the whole point is that the fear is unfounded. There was no reason for George Floyd to be so freaked out about the cops, especially over a $20 bill that was a fake. And that probably what was going on was that he had recognized the cops, knew them, and knew that he was already an enemy of them, probably because he had freaked out before. So it was his freaking out, his desperation, that was the most dangerous part. This happens in all kinds of situations that, in fact, we can get a little bit desperate when we're talking to the boss. I have done that. I have been in a desperate situation with my boss when I was working for IBM at one time. I got into a desperate situation when I was working for ComSys. It was my desperation. I could have handled both of those situations much better if I hadn't been afraid. So, in that regard, let's not talk about the fear that we have in certain situations when we're around bosses, we're around authority figures, we're around cops and whatnot like that. Let's start looking at the kind of fear that we have in our mind, even when we're in seclusion. That this is what the Buddha taught, was is to get alone, get away from all of the things that would make you afraid and desperate, so that you can begin to see that you don't need situations. You don't need other people. You don't need wild animals to have fear. That in fact, we talk ourselves into being afraid. We were trained to be afraid from childhood. We were trained to be afraid from childhood. Why? Because the childhood training always has to do with a carrot and a stick, and they use the stick more often than they do the carrot. Okay? And there's also the problem of not dealing with the child at all, and then they're going to become a sociopath or a psychopath because they don't see any results. So, if we can, let us say, through the practice of Anapanasati, start coming out of the fears as a habit that we started in childhood, we'll be a whole lot better off. So the kind of questions that you ask is based upon the fact that you're afraid. Desperate situations, they call them, and what you're really talking about is desperations, and that most desperations that people have are not real. I would go so far as to say that 99% or more of the problems that people have never actually occur. They made it up because they're afraid, and they say, oh, because I feel fear, let me go do this, let me go do that, let me go buy a gun, let me go here and there and do this and that thing so that I'll feel more safe. Well, guess what? How many of you think that owning a gun is going to make you safe in reality? How about buying a gun is going to make someone safe in his own mind? Probably not. That in fact people carry guns because they are afraid, and the gun doesn't help the fear. Okay? If they had a gun and were now not afraid, they'd never pull it. But they will pull a gun because they are afraid, just like the cops. The cops don't ever pull their guns unless they're afraid. And when do they get afraid? It's when somebody's freaking out in front of them. For instance, even when you try to bully the cops, that's because you're afraid. The right way to deal with police is by being friendly to them, cooperate with them. And also the right way to deal with everything is to be friendly with it and to cooperate with it. And now the important point is that when you're alone, that's a time to not be afraid and to start cooperating with reality. For instance, David, do you have any alligators in your house?
No, I do not have any alligators in my house.
Do you have any pythons in your house?
No, sir.
Do you have any cops in your house?
No, it's very
How
safe.
about Russian mafia?
No, great.
Okay, so the reality is that the situation that you're in is safe.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, David, on the mountain there at Wat Khao Tum? Do you have any alligators?
I haven't seen any yet.
It's unlikely for them to be up on a hill.
I've seen water monitor lizards. It was water lizards or monitor lizards.
Oh, monitor lizards. Yes, we've got monitor lizards on this island. I've seen some that were at maybe 3.5 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but what I felt when I saw that monitor lizard that time, because it was actually between Wat Khao Tum and the house here, so it was about 1 kilometer from him. In fact, I was on the way home from Wat Khao Tum when I saw this huge monitor lizard. You know what I felt?
Fear.
Joy and curiosity.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
First time I saw one of those, yeah, it was kind of scary.
Well,
From
that's
myself.
because you've been taught to be afraid. That your mom was afraid. That in fact I had here's something that happened when I was in the 6th grade. 6th or 7th, I'm not sure whether it was the 6th or the 7th grade. I think it was the 6th. In any case, I was a new kid there. We had moved into the town and I started school. And I was sitting in class at the front of the class, and the teacher wasn't in the room yet. And so some kid in the room gave me a book that was open to a page that was filled with snakes. And he said, show it to the teacher. I had no idea at that time what phobias were or the fact that anybody would be so afraid of snakes, but this teacher freaked out right in front of the class. She was so afraid of snakes that she was even afraid to the point of becoming desperate just over the photo of a snake. Just a photo of a snake. Guess what? I didn't fare well for the rest of that semester. I had become enemy number one from that teacher, and I didn't even know what was going on. But some other kid who knew that she was freaked out, put me up to it.
Dhammarato.
So, yes, go ahead.
You know, I really kind of I empathize with that teacher who's had a very strong reaction that I think most of us would say was really out of her realm of control at that moment. What advice would you give to that teacher to help work with that phobia, to work with that fear? Because I think the situation that I'm most concerned with is, well, what about when I've really lost control? I think we can agree in that example, that teacher really lost control. What would you say to that teacher to help?
All right. Let's do two things. One, let's do what a good psychotherapist or psychiatrist would do, number one. And then number two, let's do it the way that the Buddha would do it, because they're similar but different. Okay? So the example that I have is like a spider, but we could use a snake. Okay, so the woman comes into the psychiatrist. I'm deathly afraid of snakes. I just freaked out in my classroom because some idiot kid showed me a picture of a bunch of snakes. And I'd like to get over it. What does the psychiatrist says? Oh, I've got a pet snake at home. What does that teacher do? She's going to freak out a little bit. Okay? And you've got a snake at home. Yeah, he's not dangerous. I tell you what, the next time that you come, I'll bring the snake so that you can see that it's not dangerous. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. All right, we'll come back and we'll talk more about it. So she comes back the next time, and the psychiatrist says, well, I did bring the snake, and I've got it in my pocket. You want to see it? And then the psychiatrist brings out a rubber snake, a little one, a little rubber snake. In fact, he might, start with the photos of the snake first. A photo of a rubber snake, and then maybe a rubber snake. And then he says, won't you hold this rubber snake? So you see what he's doing is he's moving her closer and closer to her phobia, while he's also reassuring her that she's really safe. That in fact she came to the psychiatrist because she knows, I'll use the word, that she's nuts about snakes. So what do is that we begin to bring her closer and closer by having a rubber snake. And then we pull out the rubber snake. It's completely safe. Everybody's going to have okay feelings with a rubber snake. Have you ever had a rubber snake as a toy? I've had rubber snakes as toys. It's when we think that the rubber snake is real. In fact, you'll see it on the internet where people will put a string on a rubber snake and then pull the rubber snake close to somebody to freak them out. So what that means is that it's a rubber snake. You can see the rubber snake. It's a real rubber snake, but just the image of a snake is enough to make people afraid instead of actually looking at reality. The reality is that it's a rubber snake. It's not dangerous. That's an important point. If we start looking at stuff and we can see that what we thought it was not true, it's not real, and that our fears are misplaced. So, from that example, now let's talk about the way that the Buddha would talk about it. And that is that when you have a thought of a snake, let us say that you're sitting in seclusion. You're in your private room. There is no snakes. There's not even a picture of a snake except the one in your own head. and we think about a snake, and then we become afraid. How many of you, because we're talking about snakes right now, how many of you are actually feeling a little bit of fear? Just a little bit of fear. Yeah, okay. Well, at least we got one honest person. Anybody else wanting to say, yeah, just talking about snakes is fearful? How about you, Michael? Even a little niggle of fear?
Maybe a little smidge.
Yeah, just a little bitty tiny little fear. Well, this is the kind of stuff that we need to start looking for. Why? Because it's much easier to take care of a tiny little thing than it is a great big python when he's wrapped around us. If we can take care of the tiny little fears, then we can manage having a python wrapped right around us and not have any fear, so that we can do something that is actually beneficial. Just like when we're around a cop. I can talk about cops, and guess what? People are going to start feeling fear, because, in fact, cops are probably more dangerous than your average python, simply because your average python is far, far away, and from time to time, the cop's right in front of you. Okay? So this is the way that we begin to do it, is we begin to get alone in real safe environments. And when the thought of a snake comes up, what do we do with it? Oh, that's just the thought of a snake. It's not dangerous. It's just the thought of a snake. It's not dangerous. Wow, am I so happy that I am free from any reality of snake. That, in fact, Michael, have you ever noticed any snakes here in the yard? Because we've got them from time to time. I would say over the past 10 years, we probably had 20 or 30 snakes right here in the house. The last time that we were talking about it, the guy who I was on a call with said that there's a snake right behind me. There was a snake right here. And what do? I look and says, yeah, it's a snake. Nothing to do about it, because the snake's not after me. The snake doesn't know I'm on video. He's not trying to get me. He's not on Reddit trying to attack. He's just a snake. So, even in reality, there's no reason to be afraid. But when there is a snake, why do we have the fear of a snake when, in fact, there is no snake there? Well, now, this is not just a point. We can also say that that's true about anything. Not just cops and snakes, but how about Christians? Why are Christians dangerous? Why? Because they're liable to do anything because they know they can get forgiveness for it. So, the next point that we can say is a lot of the thoughts that we have are dangerous thoughts. We have thoughts of danger, and then we begin to feel afraid right then and there when the thought is the closest thing there is to the reality of whatever it is that we're danger. Could be the boss, could be mama, could be the mother-in-law, could be the wife, could be a cat, a dog, a cat. It could be anything. And we have thoughts about it, and then the fears come up. I have students who will talk about it in the sense of that when I was practicing Anapanasati, I began to see that I had anxiety. And the answer, then the next question would be, well, is that anxiety brand new? I mean, did you invent that anxiety and have it for the first time, and then in meditation or when you're practicing Anapanasati, you see the anxiety for the first time? Or is this an old, familiar feeling? And invariably, they'll say, oh, it's an old, familiar feeling. I've had this feeling of fear before, but now it's big enough that I can see it. And that's the real practice, is to be able to see the little things, because the little things are easier to deal with than the big things. And so this is why we want to get into seclusion, is so that we can get away from it all, get into a safe place. In fact, to get away from all of the world. Because when we get away from the world and get into seclusion, one of the things that we'll see shortly is that we didn't get away from it at all. We brought the whole world with us in the mind. So we can get far away from snakes, but we still think about snakes. We can get far away from crocodiles and still think about crocodiles. We can get far away from the cops and still think about cops and feel afraid. Any thought of any danger is going to trigger that mechanism, the instinct of self-preservation, and that will, in fact, bring up fears. And almost all human fears are irrational. They're not rational because they're not real. So what do we do then? Is we can see that this is a thought that's irrational, it's not real, and I don't have to deal with it. Let me throw that thought out and come back to the point that, wow, right now I'm safe. Right now I'm safe. That in fact you'll never get anywhere in the Dhamma of the Buddha until you can practice becoming safe and feeling safe and secure. That we're not under pressure, because the only pressure that we have is inside of our own mind. And so we can see that pressure, we can see that insecurity is because of the thoughts that we have. The Buddha would call these unwholesome thoughts, thoughts of danger, thoughts of problems, thoughts of unwholesome events. And what we can do is to say, right now, right here, there is no problem. Right now, right here, there's no cops, there's no mafia, there is no pythons, there's no alligators, there's no boss, there's no mother-in-law, there's no bullies. I'm here alone. That means that right now I can practice being safe. I can practice feeling safe. I can practice telling myself that I'm safe. Over and over and over again, we can start to talk ourselves into feeling good. Now, this is an important point, and that is that we have four foundations of mindfulness, in the sense that we have the body, we have the feelings, we have the mental attitudes and the states of mind, and then we have the mental objects. We've talked about this a lot. The new kids on the block can hear it for the first time and understand that these things are interrelated. They're deeply interrelated, but it helps us to understand. An example of that would be a pizza pie. All right, when the pizza pie comes out of the oven, what do we do with it? We normally slice it up into several pieces. So we can think of the several pieces of the pie is like into the four corners. And one corner, one big piece of pie is body. Another piece is feelings. Another piece is mental states. And the fourth piece is mental objects. Or you can break it up the way that a piece of pie has another reality, and that is you've got dough and crust, you've got tomato sauce, you've got cheese, and you've got pepperonis or anchovies or something like that on the pizza. So we can bake a pizza and break it up into four different ways. But if you have just tomato sauce over there and just dough over there, and you got to go shopping to get the anchovies, and you don't even know what cheese is, like in Thailand, then your pizza pie is not a pizza pie except in your mind. But if you take all of the ingredients and put them together, now you have a pizza. Well, this is the way of looking at who you are, is like a pizza with various factors. The body, the feeling, the mental states, and the mental thoughts that we have. And they're very, very interrelated. And when you put them together, it forms one thing that you call you. So we're now talking about the feelings of fear. Guess what? Those feelings of fear is going to have a bodily component. In fact, people who have anxiety can feel that anxiety right in the chest area. You can feel it in the throat. You can feel it in the emptiness of the stomach. Why? It's because of the chemical reactions that the brain creates. So the amygdala will talk to the pituitary glands and the pineal glands, and then they'll talk to the adrenaline glands, and the adrenaline glands will go right into the kidneys and the liver and get all kinds of poisons and make it into adrenaline and make it into cortisol and pump that stuff right into the bloodstream. So in fact, fear is a bodily component. And then when we feel afraid, mainly what we're actually experiencing is a kind of a sensation in the body that we don't like. How many of you actually like to feel afraid? Nobody? Has anybody been how about a roller coaster junkie? How about a kid on a motorcycle riding way too fast? How about a hot rodder?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I like roller coasters.
Why? Because it gives you a thrill, right? I mean, if the roller coaster had the same sensations and feelings of laying in bed, what's the point of going to the roller coaster? And yet you can see thousands and thousands. There's even a great big group of people that will go from one roller coaster to another one just to experience the thrill of being on a roller coaster. Why? What is that feeling? What is that sensation?
It's because there's science made on this, actually made huge studies on why people like to be scared, watch the scary movies and so on.
Mm-hmm.
We like to be scared under safe circumstances where we are controlled.
Under safe circumstances, right.
Exactly.
So we don't like that adrenaline rush. You're exactly right. However, most people are too stupid to figure out whether they're safe when they're afraid or whether they're afraid and in danger. And so almost always fear is associated with danger when in fact there may be no danger there. It could be just kind of exciting. But
Could I
it's the
ask a
same.
clarifying?
Sure, go right ahead, David.
I often hear you say the trinity of safe, secure, and comfortable. And I'm just wondering if you make any distinction between safe and secure. Do those two words have an important distinction between them?
Yes, the word secure has a kind of a quality of being grounded. There's no place to go, that we're secure, just like you would secure a door on its hinges. So there is a quality of security. For instance, on the roller coaster, they strap you in. They put that great big bar in front of you. Why? Is to make you secure, because if you're not secure on a roller coaster, you're not safe. But in your house with the door closed, that's the quality of being secure, that you've locked the door and there's no animals and there's no cops or whatever like that that can get in. And so that security then will help us to feel safe. So there is a big difference between the two of them. And that what we can do is we can see the reality that we are secure so that we can then begin to feel safe. This is why we want to go off into seclusion. We don't want to practice anapanasati unless you've got a real interesting position. You don't want to practice anapanasati riding a roller coaster. You don't want to practice anapanasati in a horror movie. You don't want to practice anapanasati sitting on the freeway, a busy freeway. And you certainly don't want to practice anapanasati when you're in front of a judge or sitting with your handcuffs in a police station. Actually, that's a good time to practice, if you can practice, is to begin to feel safe and secure. But normally police stations are not places for beginners to practice. We need to get into seclusion. so that we're away from all of the dangers, so that we can actually practice telling ourselves that we're safe and secure, getting the body comfortable so we can tell ourselves that we're comfortable, because now we're dealing in reality. We feel safe, we feel secure only after we are able to get the body safe and secure and comfortable. Then we can begin to talk ourselves into feeling safe, secure, and comfortable. We can begin to get the attitude of being safe, secure, and comfortable. And then at the last, we can begin to feel safe, secure, and comfortable. Now, this is an important kind of point in that you can tell yourself that you feel safe, secure, and comfortable. You can tell yourself that you're okay, and you still don't feel okay. How many of you ever had that practicing out of Anapanasati and it says, oh, there's not a problem, I feel okay? No, I don't. I don't really feel okay. I'm lying to myself when I say I'm okay, because my feelings tell me that I'm not okay. How many of you had that? I think everybody is talking about it from that perspective. The answer to that is that no, when you are afraid, when you think that you're not okay, that's the lie. And you've been lying to yourself the whole time, just like Hitler in his book, Mein Kampf, says that if you keep telling a lie over and over and over and over again, people will begin to believe it. You keep telling them over and over again, and they'll get gung-ho about it. Well, guess what? People in our society become gung-ho about feeling not okay, feeling afraid. So we're going to start now very carefully, start to telling ourselves the truth. The truth is that you're safe, you're secure, you're in a location where there is no danger, and you're going to tell yourself the truth. I am okay. I'm all right. And we keep telling ourselves that over and over and over again, and someday soon it will, in fact, begin to seep in. Now, I'm talking about seeping in. How many of you seen a piece of cloth that when it's been dried out on the clothesline and it's very, very dry, no water in that cloth at all, you put that cloth in water, guess what? The cloth resists the water. A sponge that's been dried out completely, if you put water on it, it will resist that water. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Okay, so your dry heart, your heart full of fear, your heart full of not okay, will actually resist the water of your fluid thoughts of, oh, everything is okay, everything is fine. And we don't believe it yet. But if we keep practicing it, in fact, the thing to do is when we say, oh, everything is okay, I don't have to worry about the fight that I had way back when or even yesterday. I'm safe now, I'm not around there. And then we say, wait a minute, I still feel anxious, I still feel uptight. This is another point then, is to look at that, to remember to look at how you feel, to remember to look at the thoughts that you have, even the ones that are thinking, I'm okay. No, I'm not. And recognizing the reality of the situation is that I am okay. So we have to come back to that new unwholesome thought. So we'll have an unwholesome thought, then we'll have a new wholesome thought, and then we'll have another unwholesome thought again. Can we catch that unwholesome thought? Another example of this is that Goenka says, when the mind wanders away from the breath, never mind, start again. Why does he say that? Is because the never mind part is the part that says, oh, I recognize that my mind has wandered away. I'll just come back to the breath and start again. But students don't do that. What they do is they say, when the mind wanders away from again, oh, my mind wandered away from the breath. Oh, I thought that I was supposed to do that. Oh, I'm breaking the rules. Oh, I don't know how to do this. Oh, poor me. My mind is just so broken. I can't do this. Now, that's really unwholesome thoughts. Can you check that and see that? and recognize, oh, look at me. I got all uptight because I saw myself as a failure. No, this is just ordinary. It's not a failure. Then, in fact, the whole point of sati is to do it when you remember to do it, rather than remembering it and then starting to tell yourself, oh, you're bad because you didn't remember it already. But the new remembering actually is good enough. Can you recognize that the new memory, oh, I see that the mind has wandered away. Oh, I see that these thoughts are unwholesome. This is why the Buddha has the expression, aha, I see you, Mara. Or in David's language, hot dog, I see that. I see that unwholesome thought. Hot dog, I can see that fear. Hot dog, I know that I can practice well because I can see it and see it happily rather than going back into unwholesome thoughts. So this is where we have it with that dry cloth, doesn't want to take the water. When this happens, what do? Do you say, oh, poor me, the cloth won't take the water? Or do you plunge that cloth right deep into the water and squeeze it and hold it and massage it until it does take the water?
Dhammarato.
Yes, go ahead.
I think I know what to do. I thank you so much. Your teachings are so clear. I truly appreciate them. Let's just imagine that I'm in the worst possible situation. I'm lost in the woods. I'm starving to death. I'm dehydrated. Let's say that I'm dying over several days. Well, for instance, if that's the case,
You've already gone way too far. Let's back up.
Right, but I'm just saying, if I went through that, I would so much rather only have wholesome thoughts and wholesome states of being rather than beat myself to death as I'm already dying with more unwholesome thoughts.
So listen. You have already talked about that you got lost, and then you wandered around for a while, and then you got hungry, and then you got desperate.
Yeah.
Right? So let's go back to the first point. When you have the thought, I'm lost. The first time that you have the thought, I'm lost, long before you get hungry, long before you get desperate, long before you start running around in circles. You have to have your mind together right then. And yet most people, when they get, when they have that feeling of insecurity and loss, they lose their mind. That's the first thing that they lose.
Right.
Right? So let's not lose the mind. Let's start practicing. So, in fact, you can rehearse it. Oh, if I get lost in the woods, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to start going downhill. Don't go uphill, go downhill. If you can find a stream, follow the stream. Why? Because streams go downhill. Don't follow the stream uphill. That's where the gold is, and then there are hills. But if you want safety, you go downhill, downstream. And then if you run across the road, now you're safe. Now you're found again. Why? Because it didn't matter which direction you go on the road. It might go up onto the hill and then down, and then terminate, dead end. What do? You turn around and you go back down the hill, down to civilization. And you can do this wisely. There's another point, and that is that if you probably have a clock or a watch, you know kind of what time it is, and therefore you can see the sun, and you can kind of figure out what directions things are. Now, it has been stated that a lot of animals have what you call dead reckoning. And what is dead reckoning is you know what is north, south, east, and west, and the geese use that when they're flying. They have just a little bit of magnetic stuff in their head, in their brain, and that actually has a feeling to it so that they can orient it towards north and south and east and west. Dogs do this too. That in fact the story is they found out that dogs were doing it because when a dog can go and poop anywhere it wants to because it's out in the woods or out in the fields, it almost always aligns itself north-south. Why dogs did that, I don't know. But the observers, they observed that and figured out that the dogs also have this dead reckoning. Guess what? Some humans have it too. That some people will just automatically know. For instance, some people, they come and say, oh, I'm going to town. And I say, town's not that direction. Town is that direction. I know I'm oriented. I know the difference between east and west. I know what is north. I know what is south. I have that dead reckoning also, and I'm going to rely upon that when I ever get lost in the woods. In fact, I don't think I've ever been lost. People who get lost are what they would call cityfied. They don't know what is north and south. They don't know what is up and down. But if you have that knowledge will protect you and keep you safe. And so you can, even if you're lost in the woods, you still can feel safe and secure. That there's no reason to get lost in the woods and then get lost in the mind and not know which way to go. And we start getting hungry and start going around in circles. Let's keep our wits about us.
Exactly. Hot dog. That's it. That's what I got.
Okay. The other thing that they've got some other stuff, and that is that you can put a stick in the ground and you can see and make your own sundial. Another thing that you can do is, especially in the north, that the moss grows on the north side of the tree because the sun shines on the south and the moss likes cool. And so if you find trees, now here on South Thailand in this place, you're not going to be able to use that tool because the moss will grow any way it can, when it can, because it's hot all the time as far as moss goes. So this is the point that we're making here, David, is that it has to do with, can we keep our wits about us? Can we see what's real? If we can see what's real, then we can talk ourselves into being real. And when we talk ourselves into being real, we can begin to get the attitude that we're being real, and then we can eventually start to feel like we've got it. We can feel real. We don't have to feel the way that we were trained. So, with this, we can begin to understand that it's going to take a little while. We have to actually submerge our mind into the wholesome, just like we would submerge that dry cloth into water, squeeze on it, and eventually it will take the water. Probably within a minute. If the cloth can take the water within a minute, why can't the human mind do that also? The answer is it can. If you massage the mind correctly, if you have to change your attitude that I can get myself out of this mess that I'm in, then you can begin to feel, okay, I can handle this. So basically what we're talking about here is the Buddha's position. He says that he only teaches one thing, and that is dukkha, dukkha nirodha, which means that if you can see the danger, you can see your dissatisfaction, you can see the problem, you can see the worries, you can see what it is, then you can change from being dissatisfied into being satisfied. And one of the main components of that is fear. Can we see that we're afraid? That in fact, if you haven't, let's give a simple example, that you've got to write an email to your boss. Or maybe you've got to fill out a government form. How many of you have ever been afraid when they're filling out a government form? Yeah. How about an IRS form? How about a form to renew your passport? And what is the thoughts? Oh, I'll screw this up and they won't give me a new passport. Oh, I'll screw up and it'll take too long. And we could go and fill those papers out and do it happily, or we can go and fill those papers out and feel that old fear that we were trained in childhood. Your choice. And so this would be an excellent time to practice, is when you've got to fill out some government form. We don't have any choice about filling the form out, but you sure have a choice about how you feel while you're filling that form out. You may have to visit the immigration or the visa office. You don't have any choice about going to immigration, but you certainly have a choice about how you feel about it. You might have to get stopped by the cops out on the highway. You don't have any choice about it. If they start that siren and they pull up behind you, you got to stop. It's going to be really, really bad news and dangerous if you don't. So you don't have any choice about stopping, but you do have a choice about how you're going to respond to that cop and how you feel. You will have that choice if you have that choice. But like we were talking about before with George Floyd, he didn't have a choice, did he? He was freaked out, and he didn't have enough anapanasati to say, oh, well, these are just cops. Oh, I will survive this. Let me be friendly with these cops. He didn't have a clue about that. But if he was standing on the porch here, I would start to mention to him, George, you can go sit down in seclusion and start thinking about cops and telling yourself, oh, there's nothing to be afraid of with that cop. Then, in fact, I don't even have to think about cops. That the reason I'm thinking about it is because I've been thinking about the cops way too often. Or in your case, thinking of alligators and thinking of pythons. Let's not think about alligators and not think about pythons and not think about the cops and not think about the dangers. Let's stop with all of those unwholesome thoughts of danger and start thinking about it in the sense that you know that a lot of people have pythons as pets. Why is that? Because they don't see the python as dangerous. And because it's not dangerous, they can see it as a thrill. They like it when the python wraps its legs or his coils around your leg because you know that you can uncoil that python. You know how to do that if you're trained. Just like martial artists, they can get into a fight, but they do it safely because they're trained to do that. And so they don't go into a fight afraid. That in fact, that's the whole point about a fight is that whoever's the most afraid in that fight is the one who's probably going to lose it. So getting rid of our fear is an important thing. How do we do that? We practice. We practice telling ourselves we're safe, we're secure, we're comfortable. There's no place to go and nothing to do, and we keep having these wholesome thoughts over and over and over and over again. And pretty soon, it's very much like that dry piece of cloth that we put it in water and hold it in water and squeeze it around a little bit, and fairly soon, that cloth will take the water. Your feelings will begin to be under your control. You can control your feelings. And in fact, David, if you could feel the way you wanted to feel, how would you feel right now?
Blissed out of my mind, but very satisfied.
Right. Well, do you recognize that you feel a whole lot better right now than you did when we first started talking?
Yes.
When you started talking about snakes and pythons and crocodiles and whatnot like that.
Very satisfying. Yeah, and that's something to be grateful for. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So practice well. Recognize that how easily it was over the course of 45 minutes, you were actually able to take that dry, fearful cloth of the mind of yours and put it into the juicy wet and let your mind relax. Let your feelings relax. That we're uptight when we're afraid. Let's relax. This is what the teaching of the Buddha is all about. That in fact, when he says dukkha, dukkha, nirodha, another way of saying it is when you're uptight, just relax. Just relax. Just cool off. Everything's okay. All of our uptightness, all of our fear, all of our judgments. In fact, one of the biggest ways that we have fear is because we judge things as good or wrong, good or bad. And when we see things as good or bad, naturally, we're going to have to resist and push away the bad. Just like the story of Adam and Eve. They ate of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, which means that they had knowledge of good and evil, and they had to eat the fruit of their results of having thoughts of good and evil. And if you've got evil around, how are you going to feel? You're going to feel afraid. You're going to feel uptight. And guess what? You were the one who invented the evil.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the Adam and Eve were not kicked out by some higher authority from paradise. They destroyed it with their fear. They destroyed it with their thoughts of this is evil. And because of the thoughts of evil, they became afraid. And now, who wants to be afraid in paradise?
Wow.
And yet that's the state that everybody's in. They're afraid. Go ahead, David.
Awesome. I've heard you talk about how you have personally created your own paradise, and I find that to be an extremely admirable achievement. And so I'm wondering if you might give some step-by-step instructions on how we might create our own paradise.
Yes, I just gave it to you. Step by step, stop finding things bad. Stop thinking things are evil. Stop seeing things that are fearful. And come to the point of recognizing that you already are in paradise. The reality is that room that you're in, David, is a paradise. You know that it's a paradise. There you are. You chose that paradise, and then you start complaining. That you make up your own hell.
Yeah.
Heaven and hell is a state of mind. Heaven is a state of mind. Hell is a state of mind. Your choice. Your choice. And when you take that dry cloth, that one has been out in the hot sun, that's your hell. Can you keep wetting it, making it moist, cooling it off, letting it relax? That in fact, a dry cloth is pretty stiff.
Yeah.
And so let's start relaxing it. Let's start keeping it, wetting it down with wholesome thoughts. Everything's going to be all right. Everything is fine. Not a worry in the world. Or in some cases, things like, I can do this.
I can do this.
I can do this. I can feel good. That in fact, there's a meditation that I used to give students. It was called the James Brown meditation. Have you ever heard of James Brown?
I feel good.
I feel good. Da, 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 da. Okay, so this is the way that we want to start to practice.
Right.
Is to start to feel good. And the way that we do is by talking ourselves into feeling good. And singing that little song to yourself is a good thing to do. Little songs that we have. Like smile, darn you, smile. You can't help but have a smile when you hear that song. How about don't worry, be happy. Da, 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 da. If you're not happy, you call me. I make you happy. And then there's Lanka, just enjoy the show. And everybody's saying, I want my money back. I want my money back. Just enjoy the show. I want my money back. I want my money back. Just enjoy the show. All right, all the world's a stage and everyone's an actor. The best thing that you can do is to recognize that, put down your script, and start looking at the show instead of being one of the actors on the stage. And what is the script that we're reading? The script that we learned in childhood about how to be afraid, how to be angry, how to react to things. And when we put that script down, we can just start watching. I didn't create this paradise. I recognized where I am as one. That's the reality of is you already in paradise. That's the real part. And the lie is what you can find wrong with it.
Exactly. I love that. The lie is what I tell myself that's what's wrong. Yes. That's very insightful. Because I lie to myself a lot about a lot of things that make me very unwholesome, feel bad, not good. And I don't want doing that, and I keep doing that to me. That sucks.
Yes. So this is the point of the sati then, is to see that you're creating your own disaster.
Yeah.
That you're creating your own hell, when in fact you're in paradise. Reality is there to nurture you. You start nurturing yourself too, and everything's going to be okay.
No need to trap fear.
That's right. You could just say, oh, everything's already okay. I don't have to be afraid to the point of being afraid to speak and haltering and looking for words. I can just talk freely.
Dhammarato, I have another question.
Yes.
Okay, I actually deal with intense physical pain, and I work with it. You know, I try not to let it smack me around. I do the best that I can.
Calling it pain
the mental of your point
is making it dukkha.
Yeah,
you
don't
make it dukkha because you don't like it.
Yeah.
Do you recognize they call it S&M, that some people actually like being tied up and whipped?
Yes, I have a friend that's really into that, and I personally
all right,
don't
recognize that that's his choice. You can have the same kind of choice. That in fact, Goenka makes a really important point when he says it's not pain, it's a sensation, and you don't like it, and because you don't like the sensation, you call it pain.
Right.
You could call it an itch. You could call it a throbbing. You can call it a piercing feeling, a throbbing feeling, an itching feeling. But instead, we call it pain because we don't like the throbbing. We don't like the itching. We don't like the piercing. We don't like the fire. Mm-hmm. Okay? But what we can do instead is begin to say, I can handle this. I can handle this. And now we begin to feel good because now the emphasis on, it doesn't matter how much sensation it is that I used to call pain, now I can handle it. So it's a mental attitude change. That in fact, the way to say it is that the pain, you call it pain because you're a victim to it. It's got you. It owns you.
Right.
And you can change that attitude from it's got me into I've got it. I can put some salve on it. I can, if it's the arm that's in acute pain, I can put a strap on it. I can rest that arm. If I've got knee pain because of meditation, I can stand up and walk around. I do not have to be a victim to my body's sensation. So again, it's all about attitude, and it's all about how we talk to ourselves about it. And you're calling it pain.
Right.
Intense pain. Debilitating pain. Oh, poor me. I need some help. I need a doctor. I need a coffin. I need a casket. I'm dying here, folks. And that's just an attitude. The better attitude you can develop is the attitude of, oh, it hurts, but I can handle that. In fact, the best way to see it is it's a message. If you have acute pain in a certain place, like an arm that's broken, then in fact, this is a very interesting point about that. The reason why arms don't heal well is because the kid who has a broken arm, his doctor put it in a cast and he put it in a sling, and there the kid is moving his arm back and forth, grabbing coffee, using his pen. He wants to write, he wants to go to school, and by moving those hand muscles, he's moving the muscles in his arm and preventing the bone to heal. What we have to do is give it rest and let it heal. So that means that when you're in a sling, you rest your arm. And in fact, I've got a student, his name is Scott. Scott's a sportsman. In fact, he's a referee in volleyball or something, water polo, I think. And that he threw his shoulder out. And I recommended to him, yeah, your arm is in a sling. What that means is the doctor wants you to hold it still. So the thing for you to do is to take your hand on that broken shoulder over here, that injured shoulder, put the hand on the other shoulder, and no matter what, don't move that hand. Keep that hand safe and secure and tight. And guess what? Because you're not moving that arm, that shoulder can heal. That's what pain is all about. It's a message to say, hey, man, leave it alone. Hey, man, I'm healing here. And so pay attention to these sensations in the body. They're messages to tell you to do something. And what you do is you don't like it, and then you do something to create that same pain again. It's like if you got a splinter in your foot, what that means is the foot's telling you, don't walk on me with this splinter in there. And yet people walk around with a splinter in their foot, a rock in their shoe, and then they complain. My foot hurts. Well, of course it's hurting. That's because it's got a splinter in it and you're still walking on it. Duh. Why don't you do something correct? Do something interesting. Do something valuable and wholesome, like inspect the wound, recognize that you've got a splinter, and then make a change. Pull it out. And then still don't walk on the foot. Let it heal. This is just so obvious. I don't understand why science doesn't teach this in the 6th grade. If you've got a pain, pay attention to it. It's a message. It's not pain that you don't like. It's a welcome message. Be happy that you're getting that message. Aha, I see you, Myra. But this is a big attitude change that we have to do. So every time a pain comes up, we can say, hey, what's that? Hey, I see that pain. Let me take care of it. I'm the doctor here.
Yeah.
Nurture your wounds. Tend to them correctly. Let them rest. Let them heal. And the same thing is with the mind, because the biggest wound that we have is the wounded mind. The mind has been wounded by the society. We have been beaten with that stick and having that carrot shoved down our throats. Okay, so that's where the real pain is the real pain is in the mind. When you have that pain, recognize it, see it, and nurture it. And say, everything's going to be all right. Let's not go to that dangerous place and worry about it and have the mind spinning and worried and doubtful and trying to fix it. Just say, get away from it. Take a rest already. And everything's going to work out just fine. Just enjoy the show. That's how people in paradise deal with pain, whatever it is, all the way to broken bones. How many of you had broken bones? 1, 2, no? Huh? I've been around. I broke my right foot twice. This arm has been broken. Then, in fact, no more, but it used to have a lot of asphalt in it. I also have a great big scar on the right lower leg where the bones were poking out on both sides. Double compound fracture. That's what a motorcycle will do to you. How about broken ribs? I've had those too. I've had 3 broken ribs. One of them never did heal. That sometimes the pain will come. I call it pain because that's your language. And what happens? I reach up like that and pop it back into place. It gives me that message, hey, I'm out of joint here. And I say, okay, there you go. You're back all right now. So this is what we have to do. We have to listen to the body, to let the body heal. Stay off that leg, stay off that arm, stay off that foot, and let it heal. If it's got a splinter, remove the splinter. If it's got a broken arm, set the arm. Put it in a cast, keep it immobile so that it can heal. This is what pain is all about. And like I said, the biggest pain is the pain between our ears. So we have to set it in a cast. We have to let it rest. We have to stay out of that unwholesome jawboning that we do. Oh, poor me. Wallowing in self-pity is what we do. So let's get ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and we can boogie on down the road. Let it heal. So, Eli, did we answer your question? I see a big smile on your face. That's good.
I'd like to say yes.
Pardon?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Great. How about you, Dylan? How you feeling?
A bit sleepy today, actually. A bit tired. I just ate a whole bunch of pad thai noodles. And after that, I'm just feeling really sleepy, so.
I'm having trouble understanding you. Michael, did you catch what he said? I don't hear you.
We can't hear you, Michael.
Now you got the microphone muted. All right. Sorry, Dylan, I didn't catch that.
I was just saying I'm feeling sleepy because I had a lot of noodles, pad thai noodles. So
Thai
I'm
noodles
feeling
make you
sleepy right
sleepy.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes, too many carbs.
Let's see who it is. Leonardo, how you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. How are you doing?
Ah,
Still holding it up?
Can't you tell?
Yeah, I can hear you. I've been listening in. You're saying the same thing as this last time. You know, be aware of your mind, stay happy in your mind, and be happy. There will be no fears, no nothing that can penetrate this unique monster of a happy mind that will suppress and surpass everything we know.
Yep. The Dhamma is actually quite simple, but it's good to hear it over and over and over again with various different phrasing and terminology and emphasis and timing and whatnot. But it's all just Dhamma. It's very, very simple. It can be boiled down to just 4 words. Don't worry, be happy. It can be boiled down to 3 words. Dukkha, dukkha nirodha. It can be boiled down to just a few words with never mind, start again. It's a very simple thing, but we have to keep doing it over and over again. Just like it's a very simple thing to wet a cloth. Very simple to do. Even though the cloth resists the water, you just keep putting water on it. Dump it in water. Drown it in water. So the way to handle that broken mind is to drown it in happiness. Not alcohol. But drown it in good faith. Drown it in joy. Drown it in everything's okay. Everything is fine. Not a worry in the world. Because that's the reality. The reality is that there really are no problems. But we've been taught to manufacture them, just in case. All right. So does anybody have any last words? David, do you have any final checkout?
I want to go check out that video of George Floyd. I've never seen that before. I'll check that out after.
Yes, I'm sure that Google has several references to it, especially the very first thing that happened when the cops went up to his car, because there are videos of that first interaction.
Interesting.
So, Nick, how you doing? You got anything to say?
It's very refreshing to be with the Sangha and practice. between my own ears is one thing, but to hear it with you guys is something special.
I invite each one of you on this same group that we're on the call with is to post things. Post your joys. Post your reading. Post whatever. Post what happened to you. Post your joy primarily. Share your joy. This is a Sangha where we don't complain. We appreciate each other. It's a noble Sangha. Not like Reddit. If you want to complain about something, go to Reddit to complain. Better still, shut your mouth, stop complaining, and start saying something joyful, and do that here. Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much. Dhammarato, thank you for coming. I appreciate each one of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dhammarato.
All right. Go be happy.